It's Sunday afternoon. You're exhausted. The adrenaline of preaching has worn off. And now reality is creeping back in. You're looking at your church, the plateau, the stuck numbers, the familiar faces, and you can't help but think, and I have been there before. If we only had more money, if we only had a bigger building, if we only launched that new program, man, as I said, I have been there. And let me just kind of tell you the truth. Those things do not remove the pressure. they, they actually make the pressure worse unless you raise your leadership capacity. Here's kind of why, right? More money funds, well, more decisions. But if you lack clarity, more money multiplies waste. It doesn't solve confusion, it actually funds more confusion. A bigger building just amplifies what already exists. If your church culture is unclear or unhealthy, a new space won't fix it. It just gives you a bigger confused church. More people bring a lot more complexity. More systems, more leaders, more discipleship needs. And without leadership, that more just multiplies the burnout and multiplies the backdoor losses. Every pastor I talk to feels the weight of this. Like we pray in a healthy way for more people, more dollars, more momentum. But I think sometimes we forget that more always comes with more to manage. And management requires great leadership. That's why churches often stall. It's not a lack of money or space or programs. They stall because the leader hasn't raised their capacity to match the new season or to match the new opportunity. I will never forget hearing this reality from a pastor who's a very good friend of mine. And at the time was a lot further down the path than I was. Bigger building, more people, all the stuff, In fact, this pastor was the person that a lot of us in our kind of pastoral circle looked to as having all the things we all wish we had. We all, hopefully not sinfully, but we kind of envied the position that this pastor was in. I was kind of a relatively new lead pastor at this time. And we were at a pastor's gathering with all kind of our circle. There's probably, 15 of us there. I was talking with this friend, and this friend was leading a significantly larger church. And I was very familiar with everything about the church. And in my naivety, at least as far as I can tell, these people, man, this church had everything. In fact, it had everything that I needed to be successful, or so I thought, right? So without even thinking, I just said out loud to him, man, if we had the numbers and resources you had, things would be so much easier. And I will never forget this moment. He kind of stopped me very kindly, luckily, but he responded. And here's what he said. Well, maybe, but I have never done more funerals. I have never dealt with more staff issues. I've never needed more volunteers. And before he kept going, I just kind of paused and said, oh, yeah, point made. At Woodstock City Church, where that's where I led for about 13 years as lead pastor, we didn't really have hardly any people, or we definitely didn't have any money when I first got there. I fully believed, and this is where we were when I was meeting in that group, and when I said what I said to that pastor friend, and he kind of called me out on it. I really believed that more fill in the blank, would solve virtually every one of our problems. But that was such an unfounded thought. Our church actually did grow kind of quickly. And before I left to begin supporting churches and doing this, coaching pastors full time, listen, our church had grown to 8,000 people on a Sunday. Okay. So we were a big church, but guess what? It didn't solve any problems. It created, though, dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds or thousands of more problems. The real growth ceiling, listen, and I can tell you this as a person who has led a small church, who has led a revitalization church, who has led a rapidly growing church, and has led, and I guess in our terms, a mega, mega, mega church. I don't know, right? Like the real growth ceiling isn't resources, it's leadership capacity. At every stage of growth, begins with a crisis, and that crisis is always leadership. Like you probably know this intuitively, or maybe you've been through this. Like what kind of gets you a church from 150 to 350 isn't what's going to get you to 800. What carried you from one campus to two isn't going to carry you to five. If the leadership version doesn't update, the systems always stall, and more just creates problems. It's like it's like trying to run the newest apps on a really old phone. Like the hardware just can't support the software and it crashes under the weight. That's exactly what happens in ministry. Like the church doesn't need an upgrade in money or buildings or programs. I don't think your church necessarily needs that. It might just need an upgrade in leadership. So what do you do? What do you do instead of chasing more stuff? Well, you start growing your leadership. Let me just give you kind of four ways that I did this and four ways that I recommend other pastors do this. So number one, you've got to focus on raising your personal leadership lid, okay? Every leader has a lid. You've probably heard this from John Maxwell, the law of the lid. I love this concept. So every leader has a personal lid, and your church rarely can rise above the leader's lid. So here's the challenge. Like for the next, 3 or 6 months or however long you feel like you need, pick one leadership skill that you need to grow in, just one, okay? It could be delegation. You need to start trusting people and allow them to carry more real responsibility. Maybe it's just about leading more leaders, not just leading doers, like not being the only one who can make the decisions, not being the only one who can set some direction. Maybe you can trust some other people and allow them to multiply that leadership. Maybe it's prioritization for you, discerning between what not to do, and protecting your calendar so that you can do the things that you are uniquely designed and gifted to do. Or maybe it's coaching conversations. I don't know, like shifting from telling people what to do to developing their thinking. Or maybe you need to work on creating better decision frameworks, like having a process that keeps you from bottlenecking every choice and decision that's made. I don't know. There's hundreds of things, right? It could be any of these. But just pick one and go really deep on that one. Pick up a couple of books, listen to podcasts, hire a coach. And then this is big. Don't just listen and learn, apply. Apply what you're learning, apply the information. Because listen, the bottleneck in most churches, as I said, is not money, buildings, and programs. It's the pastor. And we do not want to be that lid. All right, number two, build a leadership pipeline, not a hero culture. Not a hero culture. We want to have a leadership pipeline. So let me delicately step on a few toes here, okay? Most churches operate on a hero culture. We've got like one or two super volunteers who do everything, and we praise them from the stage like they're, saints. They're going to have a statue one day. And I get it, and they are saints. I mean, they are. But that system is unsustainable, right? Really, elevating a few heroes, that doesn't scale. You can't scale that. And it leaves the whole ministry vulnerable when one of those person burns out or decides to step away. So instead, what you really need is a pipeline, right? You need like a clear path for leaders at every level, from first-time volunteer to a team leader to like a ministry director. And so here's kind of the test, right? Give away so much ministry that you start wondering what's left for you. That's not leadership abdication. That's what we call multiplication. And that's what good pipelines look like. People at all phases of leadership executing in their space, but moving forward down the pipeline. So it takes a lot of people to do that, not just one or two key volunteers. You got to start spreading out that burden. Okay, here's the third one. You really got to work on systems. And you can start by just installing lightweight systems. Now, if you hear that ministry, I'm sorry, if you hear that term systems and you find yourself thinking, like, I did not get into ministry to install systems. Like, systems for some of us, it sounds like a synonym for red tape, right? Or bureaucracy. But here's the truth, okay? Systems are not red tape. They are rails, right? They keep leaders running in the right direction without depending on you for everything. So when you think about just some of these lightweight systems, like it may be something as simple as like a weekly priorities check-in that you do with your team or with your elders or key volunteers. Maybe it's a simple scorecard with 3 or 4 key metrics that you look at every week or every month. Maybe it's improving the handoff between different ministries. It could be just consistent meeting rhythms with people so that they know when and how decisions can be made. Again, these systems don't have to be complex. We're not, building a rocket. We're just trying to build a more sustainable organization that's kind of fueled by leadership. Again, the goal is not to build bureaucracy, right? The goal is to create clarity. And clarity, is such a gift to every leader that you're trying to raise. All right, here's the fourth thing. Invest where engagement turns into execution. Okay, invest your energy, your time, your resources where engagement turns into execution. This is the last one, okay? Leaders drive engagement, and engagement drives outcomes. Okay, let me say that again. Leaders drive engagement, and engagement drives outcomes, right? Programs do not change lives. People change lives. And so when people are engaged, they move. When they act, they give, they serve, right? So we want to invest where engagement turns into execution. So teach your leaders how to clarify expectations. Like, nobody should be guessing what success looks like. Show them how to coach to strengths. Don't just point out mistakes, but help people do more of what they're designed to do best. And model how to recognize wins, right? Celebration creates momentum. Like, momentum doesn't come from micromanagement. I mean, you know that. It comes from engaged leaders who feel trusted, who feel equipped, and who get celebrated. So, every time we do these pressure pods, I kind of offer you a challenge. So here's the challenge for you, okay? What if you took the rest of the year or the month or however long you want to take on this, not to grow your church? What if you stopped thinking about church growth, but instead focused on leadership growth? Like, what if you stopped chasing the more that you've been praying for and started preparing for it instead? And the way we prepare is by raising our lid. We expand our leadership capacity. We build leadership pipelines. We install some systems. We invest in other leaders. Because, and again, this is a very hard truth, but it is a truth. The mirror is the hardest place to look. But most of our church problems are leadership problems. And if you're the pastor, that really does begin with you. So that's actually good news. Because you're the leader, which means you hold the keys to the lid. You are in charge of your growth. You have the capacity to unlock this next season of growth, not just for your staff, but for your volunteers, for your entire church community. And it begins with you. So what do you need to do to grow as a leader? What lid is causing or stifling your church? Let's start working on that. So God can do all the things that only He can do.